All right, let's dig in a little bit to air systems, air treatment. I'll mention my system and how I have it set up here, but I really want to focus in on the air filtration part of it in this video. But we finally have my system completely done here at HQ in the yarn building. Seems like I've kept moving things around so often, and I've gone, too far on systems and not far enough on others, and so I really feel like this is a proper setup for a sort of DIY heavy. So I guess it would be a sort of heavy on the DIY side. Certainly, I'm not a craftsman. I'm not, tearing down engines and things like that. But I do use the air system very, very often. I polish a lot with it. I blow out a lot of stuff with it. I don't really use air tools because of all the electric stuff that, people have been telling me that for years. I did have the dream of having a whole set of Chicago pneumatic air tools. I just don't really have a need for them with the advent of modern battery tech and stuff like that. But I do, when I have air, I do want dry, clean, oil-free air because I'm going to be blowing out pads. I'm going to be dealing with really sophisticated paint correction, and so I've wanted to figure out a way to make my system work best. And the new Prevost system that's come out here recently sort of foots the bill. It's very expensive. My air system is very, very expensive. It's much, much more sophisticated than I need. But I wanted something that looks good and operates really well and isn't super loud. And so that's the setup that I have here. So let's just kind of work our way through it. And then we'll talk specifically. I'll show you the microair and show you how to dig into that thing. So this is a 5-horse. Operates at around probably 64, 65 decibels from, say, 10 feet away in the garage here. But this is a 5-horse silent, what they call silent piston compressor. The reason why we call it silent is it has this insulated shroud. Actually, there's a screw sticking out here I need to put in place. I need to put the anti-vibration feed on, so I'm going to do that next. But this is it'll deliver high 20s, 28 CFM, something like that. So it'll deliver quite a bit of air. What I found is that the one like I did in Helen garage or my previous garage or what I had next door before I moved in here, we had a rotary screw, which is it's the Silver 3 rotary screw version, great compressor. It just was a little bit lean for doing polishing, using the polishers, and so I decided to try out this. It was also a little lean, way too lean to do any kind of dry ice cleaning. This one is on the very minimum, bare minimum of what you'd want for the dry ice cleaner. So 5-horse, this is a roughly $5,500 air compressor, extremely expensive, but it operates at a very low RPM, I think around 550 RPMs, whereas you buy like a Husky from Home Depot, it'll operate at 3,500 RPM, just humming, super, super loud, super fast moving. Piston system, not very reliable. This is an extremely reliable, fully serviceable FIAC compressor that comes out of Italy that's imported by my friends at Werther in Houston, Texas. And then this version has a bolted-on refrigerated air dryer. I started debadging it here and I didn't finish it before we started the video. I wanted to get this knocked out here. But this is basically, think of this as like a dorm room refrigerator attached to the side of your air compressor. You really have to plan ahead for this if you want to do some really, decent amount of drying to the air. Because I'm, I like right now I have the system off, not running. Because I'm not using the system super, super often, I don't tend to get a lot of water buildup, and so water isn't too much of an issue for me. Plus, I have a supplemental dehumidification, and I have a central air conditioner as well as a properly sized Mitsubishi mini split to help supplement the central air system. And so, we're in here at, say, 50% humidity or 45% humidity, something like that. So not a lot of water introduced into the system, so not too much of an issue. So this is more of a luxury than anything. I'll plan ahead. I'll turn this on, let it cool. I'll purge the lines if I'm going to be doing like a big polishing job, and I'll just let this run all weekend, something like that. So I would have it set up. Then we have a single half-inch line coming out of the compressor. This is a unnecessary T316 stainless. The reason why I like this this type of hose. We sell these on obsessedgarage.com. The reason why I like this type of hose is because of how flexible it is. So I think we have a 36-inch hose running into my microair setup. So traditionally what I've done is done a gauged version of what's called an Alto 3. They make different sizes of these. There's Alto 1, 2, 3, and 4. I don't need an Alto 3. The reason why I choose the 3 is because I like to have the half-inch line coming in. So we don't need, this can pass like something like 70 CFM or 80 CFM, and we're only passing something like 28 at peak. So we don't need this much capability, but I like the size of this. The Alto 1 looks kind of small and dainty, and then what we do is you can buy this either gauged or gaugeless. I think I have the gauge in here somewhere. The gauge is in this box, but the gauge looks like this. And so what I've done in the past is just done this basic filtration. This will filter down to 25 microns, which is pretty non-sophisticated filtration. This has a little, I believe this is a little carbon style filter in here. Yeah, I think this is carbon style. You can see even it says 25 micron MTC capable. And then if there was any water buildup, you can purge it off the back here. But just a basic regulator. So the purpose of this is to regulate the air. So you have your gauge on the front. You can regulate if your tools operate at 90 PSI, which most do. You'd set something like 93 or 94 PSI, depending on how much loss you had in your system. And so I'd normally run it at, say, 93 PSI, and then my tools are going to be operating properly. If I'm doing something like dry ice cleaning, I want to get the full, this is a 2-stage. I think this has 150 PSI capable. I want full output. So instead of this, what I decided to do, or what I've added into my system, including my dryer, is to do the new Prevost microair. This guy is, shoot, I just looked it up. I think it's like 117 bucks, something like that with a gauge, 120 bucks. This is approaching 1,400. So you can see, here's your regulator, so there's a regulator involved, and we have 3 stages of filtration. So they call this the microair. So we have a single micron. So again, this guy here, if you had just this alone, this would bring you down to 25 microns of available or ability to. It would allow up to 25 microns of dust, dirt, oil to pass through, water to pass through. This single stage, the first stage of the filter, you can see there's a green indicator on the top to tell me that my filter is still good. This first type of filter in here is a carbon style filter. They call this a MFMC 103. These are about 135 bucks a piece. This first filter should last about 6,000 hours or 1 year, whichever's longer. So, this is going to last me the rest of my life. I've got 18 hours on my compressor here. So this filter will last the lifetime of my compressor. But this brings you down to 1 micron of water, oil. And then our second stage filtration brings you down to 0.1, or filters down to 0.1. And the third carbon filter is the filter that lasts the least amount of time. So I think it's 6,000, 3,000, 1,000 hours or 1 year, whichever is greater. And so this particular guy will bring us down to 3 parts per million of past oil, of oil that will pass through. So these two have drains. This one has a fake drain. So this is a sealed off. So these two have a float, and then the third carbon filter does not. I'm not sure why. I'd like to get some clarification from Prevost. I'll ask them about that. Maybe I'll have them follow up on the video and answer any questions you guys have about the sophistication of this stuff. Again, I think 99% of us, get yourself an Alto 3, it's fine. I'm questioning how much of this am I doing this because I can and I think it looks really cool. I mean, I think there's a pretty decent percentage of me that's doing that. Is it critical that I have like like, you know, 0.001 parts or 0.003 parts per million of dirt passing through. I don't think it really matters all that much. But, you know, I think, why not? I can, so I am. And so that's how I'm doing it. So if you have one of these things, this should be hand tight. Now you can use the Prevost. I think they have a filter wrench, but I don't think you should need it. So it should be on here hand tight. And so to replace a filter, you would simply twist, turn. Each one of these comes with a little bit of anti-seize, O-ring anti-seize inside. So you would want to, and it comes with a new O-ring in the box. So you'd want to replace this O-ring and reapply your anti-seize. It comes in the box of each different filter. And so the way that mine's oriented, the filter, you can see how it's set up. The filter's going to turn and come this way. And so what you do is grab the filter, push to the left or to the right, and then pull downward. And so that's how we replace it. You can see I've got, even on my 18 hours of this, I've got a little funk in there. So it's doing its job. It's a little moist. So there's some water in there. But to reapply, to put your filter in, you would simply slide it back up into place, get it, you know, roughly positioned, and then this will center it up when you put it in. Now inside of here is a float. And so when water builds up, this is one of the mistakes I made when I did my very first system. I did this sophisticated magnetic float drain and ran all this tubing and piping and put a bucket, and never cracked the float, not one time. And so I had virtually no water in the system, or not enough to even crack the float, because I'm not heating the thing up enough, not using it enough. And so again, you could argue, Matt, you know, why do you need this level of an air compressor for the amount of use that you're getting out of it? I agree with you. I don't, but I love it. So I also don't need a GT3 RS to drive around the streets of Lady Lake, Florida, but I want it. So you would simply just hand tighten, and the thing, you know, self-seals. It's O-ring sealed, and you're good to go. So the filter inside of the secondary stage, oops, I keep leaning on this, is a more sort of paper style filter. Then you have the carbon style filter, which is the one that goes on the right. So longest, middle, least. This one lasts the least amount of time. I'm not sure why. That's another thing I'd like to clarify. Probably because, I mean, you can even see the perforation difference. This is a much more fine particle filter. And so this one is going to filter out any big stuff that makes it through the multiple stages. And so if you're running this in a shop without air conditioning like I have, and you're running it all the time, and you're duty cycling your compressor, and you're getting it up to temp, and you're having water in the system, you're probably going to want to put some drain lines on here, and you're probably going to want to put a drain line on the tank as well. We do, Prevost does sell these. We have magnetic float drains or time drains as well. But I've just gone away to a drain, and what I'll do is maybe once a year, I'll go and crack the valve and check my filters, and crack the valve in the front, and just see if there's any water, and I'll just put a cup on there, and I'll get like a 1/4 inch of water on my paper towel. So I'll just let it set up that way. So let's run the system. It's completely depressurized, so there's no pressure in the tank at all. And so when we run this, so if I go about 10 feet away and you hear my voice, this is pretty awesome. You can hear it'll blow off, and then once it gets running, the blow off will stop. So if I was going to be polishing, I would have set this up. So I would have had my refrigerated dryer, or I had it running earlier, just to get it down to temperature. But I'm going to have a system here that's going to be really clean, really set up. We're running through our Prevost lines. I've got dedicated lines, manifolds for my tire changing, mounting, and balancing system. And then I have hose reels. And that's the other mistake in my system I've done in the past, is that I did a bunch of manifolds all over the place and never used them. So I think you don't need a lot of manifolds if you have hose reels. And I've done too many hose reels before and not used them as much. And so I just have 2 hose reels that are 50 feet long. It'll cover this whole area. And then I have the 2 manifolds that I have set up for my mounting and balancing, so I don't have to change that. But to change your, once this pressure comes up, this will come up to 150 psi. Once this comes up, then I'll set my regulator. And to do that, all I do is lift up and I can adjust my pressure via my regulator. So it's a really simple process to, once you get your system done. I mean, compressed air is so hard to find out any information about, but we can design your system from scratch and help you choose. Do you need just an Alto 3? You know, what are you going to be doing with your system? We've kind of broken through a lot of the, there's a lot of experts out there, but they're usually local and hard to find. It's hard to find this information online. And so every time I go to SEMA, I meet with pretty much every air compressor manufacturer, and I keep coming back to this FIAC, this Italian-made machine that's assembled in Houston by the guys at Werther. These are industrial-grade machines used for things that are much, much more sophisticated than what I'm using it for. But I'm telling you, me just having this conversation with you with this thing firing on all cylinders 4 feet away from it, it's pretty remarkable. If we had a regular non-silenced version, high RPM machine, this sucker would be screaming at 90 or 95 decibels. Let's let it come up to pressure and then we'll bleed off. We'll see where my regulator's at. I should have it around 90, but we'll see where it's at. I think this stuff is beautiful, man. I love the Prevost lines. I would never want to put them behind the wall. I like to have them on the wall. My next step here at HQ is to set up my pressure washer right next to this, and then we're going to go and repair and patch all the walls and paint them and have this place done. So we will have these filters in stock for the microair. They're $130, like $127 a piece or something like that. They're all the same price, which I find kind of odd, but they're all exactly the same price. And again, each stage has a different type of filter. And in the filter box, there's an O-ring, a refresh O-ring. So there's another new O-ring for the housing. I would suggest taking this, washing it out with some all-purpose cleaner, getting it clean, and then you would redo your grease the O-ring. Almost there. I've got to get some soap out. Must have a couple of leaky connections because it doesn't hold the air. So the reason why I let it bleed dry here was because I got tired of it kicking on in the middle of the video. So I got to get some soap and water and figure out which one of these connections needs a little adjusting. All right, here we go. 145 PSI. And so to set up my pressure, so I'm at 90, there's 100. So if I wanted to bleed off some, so I increase my pressure by turning clockwise, decrease by counterclockwise. You can hear the air coming out. I usually run it around 95, maybe 94 PSI. Lock it down, and that's my system. So we have this entire stuff, every part and piece of this, every nipple, every reducer, every hose, every valve. We now have our own OG spec hose. I have the Prevost Euro high flow and industrial couplers, plugs. I've been chasing this for a long time. Easy coil Cox hose reels. This is the new, OG spec F5 Continental hose, which I like so much. Nitro rubber. And the easy coil design with our full fluid swiveling couplers. We have the plugs. We have all the parts and pieces you would need to do your system. So just go to obsessedgarage.com. Chances are you probably need some help with this. Shoot an email to support@obsessedgarage.com. They'll get you set up with our design team, and we can design you a system from scratch. But that's the main focus of today's video, was the microair, which I've just gotten set up. I'm a huge fan. It's a lot of money, but you know, if you're building a garage like mine, it might be worth the investment. So thanks for watching. Appreciate your support. If you have questions that are specific, you want to talk to me and get my opinion on it, just shoot me an email, matt@obsessedgarage.com. Be happy to help. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.